Awesome. Well, if this is your first time here, let me just kind of bring you up to speed as far as what we've been doing. We've been in a series concerning the merging of two churches, two bodies, two families. And I guess we can call this series, "And the Two Shall Become One." And the two shall become one, because that's exactly what we are doing here. So we are taking our time in doing this. As you know, in order to build something, you first must set the foundation. You must lay the foundation. And the higher you want to go in your building, the deeper the foundation needs to be. And so that's why we've been taking our time at this. That's why we've been taking our time in setting the foundation of what I believe we need in order to make this thing work. And so our first message, we talked about unity. We talked about how do we come together and blend but not break. How do we come together without falling apart? And according to God's word, we are to endeavor to keep the unity of the brethren in the spirit of peace. Then we talked about change, being open to change, being willing to let go of the old. That way we may be ready for the new thing that God is going to do in us, to us, and even through us. And then last week we talked about how church is like Christmas toys. Some assembling is required, okay? It's going to take us coming together and boarding the two ships that God has ordained for us to make this work. And that is relationship and fellowship. And the more we go together in this call, in this bond of unity, of brotherly love, in the same hope, the same faith, worshiping the same God, that God will then so intrinsically bring these two bodies of believers together that we may do all that God has called us to do. Well, we're going to continue today, and we're actually going to begin to build a little bit on the foundation. We're going to still set a foundation, but we're going to begin to build a little bit on that foundation. As we mentioned in our announcements, Dr. Bain's retirement party is tonight, okay? And we're going to come back together tonight, and we're going to celebrate over 30 years of Dr. Bain being in ministry. Over 30 years. It's amazing. Just to give you a little perspective, Dr. Bain has been in ministry about as long as I've been alive. You know, so just to give you a little perspective on that. But we're going to come and celebrate his retirement, not necessarily his ceasing from the work of the Lord. He is going to continue to work in the Lord. It's just going to be in different capacities. But I thought because of that, because now after tonight, Dr. Bain will officially be retired from the pastorate, that it will be a good chance for me to talk about also retiring the name of the church Dr. Bain had built. Now, as I said before, I know for a lot of us that can be a very sad thing. As my wife explained, as we make the decision to allow post-fellowship to dissolve, that was a very sad thing for us. We did not want to do that. We did not want to let that thing go, because we've been at it now for 9+ years. But we knew in order for something to be reborn, something first has to die. And so now as Dr. Bain is retiring, we are also going to retire the name of the church that he has built. Now, for those of y'all, this comes to a surprise to you or a shock to you. Just let me let you know, first of all, that Dr. Bain has requested that we change the name. So this is not a hostile takeover. We didn't pull one over his eyes. We didn't trick him or anything like that. Dr. Bain himself has requested that we change the name of this church, not only because he is retiring, but because this is two churches becoming one, okay? This was not a hiring of a pastor. This was the merging of two churches. So because of those reasons, we felt that it was appropriate to change the name of the church, okay? Now, this is where you come in. Because one of my promises that I made to the leadership of this church is that I would always listen to the people. If you are a member of this church, you will always have a voice in this church. We have an open door policy. As long as you're on the roll, as long as you're a member here, then you have every right to voice your feelings, your opinions, your fears, whatever it is that you have. So even with the naming of the church. And that's why if you go back outside in our foyer, on the welcome counter, you are going to find a suggestion box, okay? You're going to find a suggestion. It's a brown little suggestion box that has pad and pens there. And anybody who is here today, you are more than welcome to go out and to put your suggestion for what you think the new church name should be, okay? Now, I know by doing that, I'm taking some chances. I know by doing that, there will be some of y'all who say, well, I think it should still be Pulse Fellowship. And there may be some of y'all who say, well, over my dead body, will you change the name from Believers Fellowship? Hey, let me just say, I would not tempt fate if I were you, okay? Because if God has to call you home to get you out of the way, he can do that, okay? So I wouldn't tempt fate. But while we are appreciative of your loyalty, it is very appreciative of your loyalty to both bodies of believers here, more than likely that is not going to happen, okay? It is not going to remain Pulse Fellowship or Believers Fellowship, okay? But if you have another name, you think that it may be a great fit for us, we want to hear that. We're going to consider every name that goes in that box. But I need to also let you know that I have a suggestion as well, okay? I have a suggestion for the naming of the new church as well. But because I'm the pastor, I'm the only one who can argue my case for it. So that's what we're going to do this morning, okay? The name of the church that I believe, or the name that I believe the church should be, is Believe Church, okay? Believe Church. Hold on. I say don't show it yet. Come on, yeah. Goodness. And after the message, we're going to show it. All right, he has it up there, so that's fine. Okay. Believe Church. Okay, now that may not sit well with y'all right now. That may not resonate with anyone right now. Okay, but I'm hoping at the end of this message, after you have heard what God has placed on my heart to speak to you about today, then you will know and understand why I believe the name of our new church should be called Believe Church. Now, as soon as I say that, as soon as I say, well, I think it should be Believe Church, if you are from the Believers Fellowship, you may say, well, that's so similar to what it is already. What's the point? Why change it to begin with? And if you're from Pulse Fellowship, you're saying, well, that's so similar to what it is now. That's not fair. Well, you both would be missing the point. You would both be missing the meaning and the message behind the name. And so I thought I would take the next 30 minutes or so addressing the meaning and the message behind this name. And I've entitled this particular message, Name Above All Names. Name above all names. If you have your Bibles, our two scriptures for today, we have two for our text. The first will be found in Acts chapter 4. Acts chapter 4. And then the second is found in Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2. And forgive us, please be patient with us. They're going to try and work out that cave sound of my voice. They'll eventually get it here. Acts chapter 4, place there. Philippians chapter 2. Acts 4 and Philippians chapter 2. Acts chapter 4, verse 12 says this. For there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. For there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. If you go to Philippians chapter 2, it says it in this way, verse 9. Therefore, God has also highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, of those in heaven, of those on earth, and of those those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. Jesus Christ has been given the name above every name. Jesus Christ has been given the only name by which men must be saved. Now your question maybe is, well, what does that have to do with naming our church Believe Church? Why then would we name our church Believe Church? Well, what is actually in a name? What is behind a name? What is the purpose of a name? Well, you may say, well, the purpose of a name is simply to identify. That is how we identify people. That's how we identify things. That's how we identify places. The name identifies you. And I would say, yes, you are right. You are correct. But not only does a name identify who you are, a name also identifies whose you are. It identifies whose you are as well. I have an older brother. He's about 3 years older than me. And so whenever I was entering a school, he was leaving that school. I went to Woodlawn Elementary, and when I went into about the 3rd or 4th grade, he was leaving that school. But every time I would go into a school and he would leave a school, on the very first day of school, whenever they would go through the roll sheet, when they would get to my name, Cornelius Winchester, they would say the same thing. Oh, are you Samuel's brother? I say, yes, I am. Whenever somebody would know that I was a Winchester, they say, oh, you're Reverend Winchester's son, aren't you? I say, yes, I am. Oh, you're Sandra's son. Yes, I am. Why? Because a name not only identifies who you are, it also identifies whose you are, who you belong to, where you've come from. And so in the same way, this is what this name is going to do. Not only does a name identify who you are and whose you are, it also identifies what you are. What you are. I went to King High School. I played sports when I was there at King, and while playing football, ever so often somebody would get hurt. Ever so often when we're going through the game, somebody would have a collision and they would get hurt and they would fall to the ground. And every single time that happened, it was interesting because the cheerleaders, they would begin to chant something. And what they would begin to chant is this: he's a Mustang, he's a Mustang, he's a mighty, mighty Mustang, he's a Mustang. And they would begin to chant this so much so the whole crowd began to join in. And they would begin to say, he's a Mustang, he's a Mustang, he's a mighty, mighty Mustang. And what they were saying to that is, look, I know that you have fallen, I know that you have gotten hurt, I know that you are down, but because you are a Mustang, you can get back up. Because you are a Mustang, even though you have fallen, you can now get back up. Remember what you are. Not just who you are, not just whose you are, but remember what you are as well. And when you remember, when you recall, when you identify with what you are, even though you've fallen, you can get back up. God is calling us to a place where we are identifying with him. We are identifying with the name that is above all names. Not only does a name identify who we are and whose we are and what we are, but even what we do. What we do. If I were to mention the name doctor, instinctively you will think of someone who works with the elderly, works with the sick, who gives advice on health, who you may see them in the operating room. As soon as I just mention the name doctor, instinctively you think of what somebody does. If I give you the name fireman, you instinctively think of somebody fighting fires or putting them out. So a name not only identifies who you are and whose you are and what you are, but also what you do. What you do. This is the meaning and the purpose of a name. Now, when we name our children, we usually name our children based on how the name sounds to us, right? And that's how we name our children. one mother who wanted her daughter to have a unique name. So she named her Unique. That was her name. Because it sounded cool. It sounded unique. When Cynthia and I, we first got married, we had a couple at church come to us and they say, oh, wow, are y'all going to name y'all's children with names starting with C's? And we didn't know what she was talking about. I was like, why? Why would we do that? I said, well, because both of y'all's names start with C's. See, my real name is Cornelius. Of course, starts with a C. Cynthia's name, of course, starts with the C. And so when they told us that, it was like, wow, yeah, that may be a good idea. We're going to name all of our children with names that start with C. And so now we have Kason and Cameron and Caleb. Why? Because we name them based on how it sounds. But that's not the case with God. That is not the case with God. That is not how God named anybody. God did not name anybody based on how the name sounded. For example, you would never think to name your child Lucifer, would you? You better not. You would never think to name your child Lucifer. But Lucifer is actually a beautiful name. Lucifer is actually a great name because Lucifer means shining one. That's what Lucifer means. It means shining one. It was a son of, or star of the morning. Because this is exactly how the Bible describes Lucifer being made. God just poured everything he had into this angel called Lucifer. And so comparing the sun with Lucifer would be like comparing our sun in the sky with the star that you can still see in the morning even though the sun is still out. That was Lucifer. He was the shining one. He was the star of the morning. But when he decided to rebel, when he decided to come against God, his character changed, and therefore his name changed as well. God says, you're no longer Lucifer, shining one. You are now Satan, which means adversary of God. He got a name change. His name matched his character. His name matched who he was, whose he was, what he was, and eventually what he would do, come against God. Not only Lucifer to Satan, but Abram to Abraham. God comes to a man named Abram one day and he says, Abram, I'm going to stop calling you Abram and I'm going to begin to call you Abraham. Why am I going to call you Abraham? Because Abraham, you are going to be a father of many nations. We're going to talk a little bit about that next week. It being Father's Day. But God says, I'm going to call you what you are going to be. I'm going to call you what you already are, even though you're not there yet. I'm going to go ahead and call you Father of many nations, even though you don't even have one child yet. He changed his name to match who he was, whose he was, what he was, and what he would do. Then you had Jacob. Jacob means supplanter. It means deceiver. Even when he had tricked his father and stole his brother's birthright, Esau comes up and says, yeah, he was rightfully named. Y'all got him right when y'all named him Jacob because he is a deceiver. He has deceived you. He has stolen my birthright of my blessing. That's what Jacob meant. And it matched him. But one day when he finds himself wrestling with God, and God touches his hip, not only does he get a new walk, he gets a new name. God changes his name there as well. He says, no longer will you be known as Jacob. No longer will you be known as supplanter, deceiver. You will now be known as Israel, Prince of God. Israel. He got a name change to identify who he now was, whose he was, what he was, and what he would do. He would be the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Even Jesus himself renamed Simon. Simon, I'm not calling you Simon anymore. You are known as Peter. Peter means rock. Because it's upon the revelation that you just spoke that I'm going to build my church. And so names identified who people were, yes, but it also identified whose they were, what they were, and what they would do. And it wasn't only people, but places as well. If you still have your Bibles open, you can turn there, but we'll put it on the screen for you. Exodus chapter 15. Exodus chapter 15, starting in verse 23. You know the story. The Israelites are going through the wilderness. They're thirsty. They're looking for water. And they come across this body of water. It says in verse 23, now when they had come to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. Now, Marah or Mara means literally bitter. That's what it means. So when they get to this body of water that they cannot drink because it is bitter, that's the name of it. They give it a name to match its character. They give it a name to match its identity, to match what it is. Genesis 28, you remember the story of Jacob's ladder. The Bible says that Jacob goes to this particular place. He takes a rock as a pillow. He falls asleep, and he begins to dream of this ladder with angels ascending and descending on it. And there, God himself reveals himself to Jacob. And he gives him the plans that he has for his life. Well, we pick up the story in verse 18 of Genesis 28. It says, then Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put at his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. Verse 19, and he called the name of that place Bethel. But the name of that city had been Luz previously. So he goes to this city called Luz. But after he has his encounter with God, after he sees the ladder with the angels ascending and descending, and God comes and meets with him and gives him what he is going to do, he says, no longer should this place be called Luz, it is going to be called Bethel. Because Bethel means house of God, or place of God, or the place where God meets his people. So people get a name that identifies who they are. Places got the exact same thing. But did you know that that was even true about God? Did you know that was even true about God himself? Remember when God calls Moses from the burning bush? And Moses comes and he says, Moses, I am sending you to Pharaoh. I want you to tell Pharaoh that I said, let my people go. Well, Moses, he begins to try and get out of this call. And he says, well, I can't speak very well, and what if they don't believe me? What am I going to do? But there was one other excuse that he came. He says, what if I go to them, God, and they ask me who sent me? Because there were more than one God. According to the Egyptians had many, many, many gods over and over again. So just by going to Pharaoh and saying, God said, let my people go, Pharaoh would say, well, what God are you talking about? Whose God are you talking about? What God are you talking about? So Moses said, God, you're going to send me to Pharaoh. Who shall I tell them sent me? In other words, what he was asking is, what is your name? What is your name, God, that I may let them know this is the God who sent me? And what did God respond with? He says, well, you tell him I am sent you. Tell him I am sent you. What kind of name is I am? Well, what God was saying is, Moses, I am eternal. Moses, I am everlasting. Moses, I am in all places at all times. Moses, I am all-knowing. Moses, I am all-powerful. Moses, I am the great I am. See, if you go to them and you just say, your deliverer has sent you, then they may be in the misunderstanding that I am limited just to delivering them. Where I have the power to deliver them from Egypt, but I don't have the power to provide for them once I do that. If you go to them and you say, your provider has sent me to you, then they may think that I am limited only to providing for you. I can give you what you need while you're in Egypt, but I don't have the power to get you out of Egypt. So because all that I am can't fit on a business card, just go ahead and tell them, I am sent you. Whatever you need, I am. If you need a doctor, I am. If you need healing, I am. You need a provider, I am. If Now, you can't fit all that on a business card. you can't sum all that. So he said, just tell them, I am sent you. And this is why even Jesus Christ is known by so many names. I mean, put that slide back up. Put our title slide back up. You will see our title slide. It is made up of all the different names that Jesus is known by. All the different names that Jesus is known. Why are there so many names for Jesus? Because there's so much of him. There's so much of his nature. There's so much of his character. There's so much of what he is and what he does. And so all of these names identify really who Jesus is. So there are so many that we can't go through all of them, but I thought I'd try a little bit here. Jesus, he is named Jesus because Jesus means God saves. But he is also named Emmanuel. Remember when the angel comes, he says, and you shall call him Emmanuel. Why? Because Emmanuel means God with us. He is Christ because he is God's anointed. He is the Lamb because he's God's sacrifice. He is righteous because he's God's standard. He is mediator because he's God's go-between. He is Savior because he's God's answer. He is the light because he's God's revelation. He is the bread because he's God's sustenance. He is the door because he's God's access. He is the way because he's God's road. He is the truth because he's God's foundation. He is the word because he's God's will. He is life because he's God's promise. He is the king because he's God's glory. He is the Lord because he's God's authority. He is the Son of Man because he's 100% humanity. And he's the Son of God because he's 100% deity. He is the name above all names. And that's just a few of them. That's just a few of them. Because names identify not only who you are, but whose you are, what you are, and what you would do. So now, let's go back to the name of the church. What does this have to do with naming our church Believe Church? Why would we name our church Believe Church in light of all of that? Well, because either we believe all that, or we don't. Either we believe all that we just talked about, that we just said, or we don't. Either you believe in the name above all names, the power of God, or you don't. And if you really believe in all that we just said, then not only will you be shouting on Sunday morning, you'll be shouting on Monday morning as well. In other words, what you believe, what you profess, what you claim you truly believe in should carry on into everyday life. Not just in church on Sunday morning. You know, back in the 60s and 70s when maids would go to interview for jobs, they would have this saying about what they would and would not do. And I remember watching the Jeffersons one episode, and they were interviewing Florence for the position of a maid there. And so she began to say, oh, by the way, I don't do windows. I don't do windows. Oh, yeah, and I don't scrub floors either. I don't scrub floors. No. No, I don't do dishes. And she began to name this laundry list of things she didn't do, including the laundry. You know, after a while, you're probably thinking, well, what do you do then? But more importantly, why call yourself a maid if you don't do what a maid does? Why call yourself a maid if you don't do what a maid does? And sadly and unfortunately, we have a lot of people calling themselves believers who don't believe. Oh, they call themselves believers, but they don't believe. We have a lot of Christians in the church who call themselves believers, but yet don't believe. Oh, no, don't get me wrong. You believe that Jesus died for your sin and that he's coming back again, but you deny the power of all that within. And you deny it because you live in a constant and perpetual state of defeat. How is it that you can believe in all that we just said, all that we just identified Jesus Christ as being, but yet you live in a constant and perpetual state of defeat? Simple, you don't believe it. You don't believe it. Oh, you come to church and you sing the songs and you clap your hands and you shower hard, but in your heart of hearts, when you're hit with life, you really don't believe what you profess and proclaim on Sunday. God wants us to believe. He wants us to be identified with the name that is above all names. Do you realize that there is one central theme of all the Bible? One central theme of all the Bible. There is one prerequisite for receiving anything from God. It even precedes receiving a pulse. For those of y'all who want to keep the name Pulse, do you realize that this prerequisite even precedes receiving a pulse? You can't even receive life from God without this. And what is it? To believe. To believe. Everything starts with believing. Everything that you're going to receive from God requires you to believe. Everything that you're going to be and everything that you're going to have and everything that you're going to do is going to require that you believe. The Bible says Abraham believed God and it was accounted to him unto righteousness. Rahab the harlot believed the spies and she and her household was saved when the walls of Jericho came crashing down. The widow believed in the words of Elijah and she and her household ate for many days even though it was a drought. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego believed that God was able to deliver them and they didn't even come out smelling like smoke. Jesus Christ came to them and says, it's because of your unbelief that you don't see the hand of God. It's because of your unbelief that you have missed your holy visitation. It's because you will not believe. It is all based on believing. That's why that one man said, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. Help my unbelief because, no, I need to connect with you. I need to receive from you. And if the only way I can do that is that I believe, then help me with my unbelief. And Jesus is willing to do that. That's why when he rose from the dead, he comes to Thomas. He said, Thomas, stop doubting. Go ahead, put your hand in my side. Put it in my side. Put your fingers in the nail prints of my hand. Stop doubting and what? Believe. Stop doubting and believe. Even the apostles, they said, believe on the Lord Jesus, and you shall be saved. It's belief. It's to believe. That's who we are. That's what we are. It identifies us with whose we are. And it is what we are going to do. How were people saved in the Bible? They believed. How were people healed in the Bible? They believed. How did people float on the flood? They believed. How did people have babies at 90 years old? They believed. How were they able to quench fires, tame lions, slay giants, walk on water, multiply bread, raise the dead? It is because they believed. That's the only reason. That is the only reason. Go to the scripture, search all of those stories, and you will see somehow, somewhere, they exemplified belief. That's what Hebrews 11 is all about. We call it the Hall of Faith, right? Go to Hebrews 11, you'll read of men and women who are there because they believe. Yeah, their accolades and what they accomplish are there too, but they're there because they believe. So I thought in naming this church, I need to think like a sinner and a saint, okay? I need to think like a sinner and a saint. What name can identify the people of God, but at the same time speak to those who will soon be? Because I can come up with a name that the church would be on fire for. As a matter of fact, that's one of the names I had. Firefall Church. I thought that was a great name. Firefall Church. We're going to be now called Firefall Church. Because that's exactly what's going to happen every time the people of God come together. Somebody said, well, that may scare off some sinners, though. Some sinners who don't know the Lord, they may not want to come to your church if it's called Firefall Church. So I said, okay, I got to think like a sinner and a saint. I got to think like a sinner and a saint. And so what name could identify the people of God, but at the same time speak to those who are still out? Speak to those who have not yet come in. Because believe is already in their vernacular. It's already there. They're already talking about it. Especially in the sports arena. I mean, they have t-shirts. I believe. We believe. Do you believe? They're already saying it right now. if you believe is wrong. And so we just need to connect the secular with the sacred, and it would identify the people of God at the same time speaking to those who are not yet in. It will identify who we are, whose we are, what we are, and what we do. We are Believe Church. We are Believe Church. We believe we belong to Christ because we believe in Christ. And our only aim, our only goal is to believe so much so that others may believe as well. That's what we're about. That is what we're about. So, I'm going to give you an opportunity once again to go out in the foyer and put your suggestion down, but this is my suggestion. Let's put that slide up again. I even came up with a logo for it, but I'm not a graphic artist, so if you're a graphic artist, you know of a graphic artist, should this be the name of the new church, if that's what the leadership of this church decides on it being, then we'll try and tweak a little bit. But if you go back to the logo here, you will see that I have a B. That's emphasized there, a C going around it, and it even makes the cross in the middle. That was my wife's idea, have that cross there in the middle. Yeah. And it just says, Believe Church, become, belong, believe. That's what we're about. Become, belong, believe. And so when we began to just blanket this whole city with that, and we began to put it on social media, and we began to make t-shirts and bumper stickers, and we start telling people and talking about, do you believe? Or what church you go to? I go to Believe Church. That's what we do. We believe in our church. We believe God, that he is a great God, that he is able to do all things that we need him to do. We go to Believe Church. This is what we are wanting. So, again, I want to keep my word and give you the opportunity to come up with another suggestion. And if it resonates with us, so be it. I'm open to suggestions. But if not, if this happens to be the new name of the church, then we will proceed with this, and we will let you guys know, hopefully by next week. Amen? Can we give the Lord a hand one more time for his word here?